Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our 11th episode of EDspresso Café. Today, we are talking about installing Java when you need a break, aka coding in the classroom. And I'm really, really pleased to have with me, joining us all the way from Dubai, or Abu Dhabi rather, Shanna Maji. Thank you so much for being here. Have you?
Thank you, Lindsay, for having me.
So I met Shanaz once upon a time in a classroom in Durban. I think we met online before we met in person, right? As part of the Apple Professional Learning community and connecting on Twitter and all of the awesome social media. So Shanaz is used to be living in Durban, like I said, Clarence Primary, and now she is the digital coach in the kindergarten at Al Ittihad National Private School, proudly representing South African teachers abroad. So it's super, super, super awesome to have you here. Shanaz has done so many wonderful things in her classroom, and we've got one of the wonderful things that you do in your classroom on our website. So if you want to have a look and see what Shanaz has been up to and the lesson of hers that we've featured, you can pop to purpleza.co.za/stories, and the link to Shanaz's direct story is in the description. So if you want to have a look there while we're chatting, I'm going to ask Shanaz to share a little bit about that lesson and a little bit about how she came to understand coding and computational thinking. So have a read there and explore. And if you're watching us live on YouTube, a special welcome to you. Please feel free to use the chat and pop us a message to answer it. So let's make the most of that time. So I think the first thing that I'm intrigued about, Shanaz, so the lesson we have featured of yours on the website is, in fact, a maths lesson. Now, I am not the biggest fan of maths. It was my lowest mark in matric. It's a subject that kind of makes me a little bit anxious. So I'm keen to hear about your thinking around how you help children overcome that maths anxiety that so many of us experience, and why it is that you chose to teach them about triangles and angles using the methods that you have.
Hi, Lindsay. How are you? Thank you so much for having me today. Really excited to be here and really excited to inspire other teachers to get them to have fun in the classroom. I think, as you said, with maths, it was like anxious for everyone, myself included in high school, didn't really enjoy maths. And then I became a teacher and had to teach maths. So, can you imagine the added anxiety of that? Um, and then also, we wanted to make maths more fun for our learners, for our students. We wanted to make it something that they've been doing all along, something that they can relate to, and also there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear around maths. So by taking away that fear, we just leave room for the love of learning. And I always say, like, take out the busyness, get down to business. Let's do this. Um, so in terms of getting them to understand it, it's very, very hard, with some of the geometry um, concepts that we need to teach. It's very
Mm,
hard for them to visualize it. Being in a South African classroom where resources are not very readily available, we have to think of ways in which to get them to visualize something that's abstract. I mean, teaching angles, teaching them that a scalene triangle has three different types of degrees, three different things, and all of that equals to 180 degrees. Or like an isosceles triangle looks like a
mm,
mountain, and it has an obtuse angle. I mean, all of these words, sitting in a classroom, and you've been thrown at with all these words. It's very, very scary. For one, it brings a lot
mm.
of fear into like children and stuff. But if we can stop looking at the words and just break it up into smaller bite-sized pieces, or like espresso, like a little shots that we're
Yes.
doing now, break it up, break up the
Mm,
learning, make it easy for children to digest, and it helps. It really does help. So what I did was, we thought about the whole concept of teaching angles, and we said,
mm,
instead of making it fearful, let's make it fun. And we look at coding. So coding is exactly that I just spoke about now, and it's about breaking up things into small bite-sized pieces. And yeah, so we did that
So it's really, really fascinating to me that you say you've used coding to help children overcome a fear of maths, because I think that most teachers, I mean, we've all heard, about the government wanting to incorporate coding and robotics into the curriculum, and it's becoming much more prevalent. But I still feel like for a long time, even I had that perception that coding is for the computer people, and I'm just a teacher and I don't know about these computer things. And I think that, I mean, I don't know if you share the same experience, but I think that a lot of teachers have this fear when they hear the word coding, robotics, computational thinking, any of that stuff, that they're like, but I'm not qualified, I can't do that. So it's really fascinating to me that you've used coding and computational thinking to overcome children's fear of maths, when I think coding and computational thinking itself is something that so many teachers fear. So what would you say to teachers who feel like, I don't know about this coding thing, I don't see why I should learn it, it's not my thing. Teachers who are afraid of coding, what would you give them?
So Lindsay, I was exactly like that. I hated, not hated it, but I didn't know anything about it. I also thought it was something super complex. I mean, now I'm teaching kindergarten, and like we wanted to do, what is it, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and I was like, oh, let's do a coding activity. And the other teachers were like, what is this? Why do you want us to do something so complex? And a couple of years ago, when I attended another PD, and they broke it up into they made me understand that coding is like the Macarena, like the actual Macarena. And that's when it like clicked that we don't have to overthink things. And even though it has like computational thinking or like big words, everything is just really simplified. And if we break it up into smaller sizes, we can understand it better. So with coding, like the Macarena, it's a sequence that like we put things together, and then that sequence is, when we put them over and over, it becomes a loop. And then when we look at it like in a whole frame, it can be an algorithm. And now all of these things I'm throwing at you, like really hard words and really, really difficult words. But when you break it up, it can be explained really simply. And when we use something like this, where you taking something that's a whole and then making it into smaller sizes, like when you look at the triangles that we're going to that we explored during the lesson, we decided to get the children to draw it using the drawing part of Sphero. We use a Sphero ball, the robot, and they drew their triangles, the different types of triangles, the three types of triangles that we were learning about. And what we did was we got them to explore with that. So they were exploring. It was inquiry based. It was super fun because there was paint involved. I mean, which grade 6 child wouldn't want to like play with paint?
Such
And
fun, hey?
yeah, like if we could cover so many stones and still have fun at learning. I mean, if you ask them now, um, did they remember A, B, or C? They're not going to remember it. But when you say, oh, do you remember that painting lesson that we did? Oh yes, we learned about the obtuse triangle, or the
Right,
triangle that looks like
exactly.
a mountain, because it's linked to like their hands, and it's hands on, it's practical. It becomes fun, and when it becomes fun, they want to do it. And because of that motivation, it's something that they're going to remember. It's all
And
linked
also
to
connecting, like you're saying, connecting it to things that are real and relevant for
real.
them. Like the younger kids, they love stories that you can think
Yeah.
about. How do you incorporate, coding and Goldilocks and the Three Bears? I think when we start to think about technology as the thing outside of the classroom, and this other thing that you go to the computer to lesson, you go to the computer room for that lesson, we really start to miss out on amazing opportunities for
Limited.
our students to develop those skills, right? I mean, we had just on Saturday, we hosted our Tech for Tinies online conference, and so many teachers shared the most incredible ways that they're incorporating STEM into stories, that they are teaching coding and computational thinking with unplugged activities and integrating it into the curriculum. And I think what we're really starting to see is that it is absolutely possible. You just have to kind of break down that thinking that it's not something out there, and that coding is something we do every day, right? When we're making a cup of coffee, that's a
Brushing our teeth.
process, right? It has
Yeah.
steps. right? It's everywhere. So I know that so you're based in the kindergarten, but obviously at the moment you've got experience with teaching computational thinking and coding across some different ages. Won't you share with us some of the kind of activities and specific things that you do to hopefully inspire teachers to try some basic coding, even if it's an unplugged coding activity? It doesn't always have to require lots of tech and resources, that we can still give our kids those skills.
Okay, so I always start off with unplugged. I love the idea of it being kinesthetic, like having their hands involved with it, because there's something about their hands connected to the brain that when you actually physically doing it, it lends
Mm,
itself to like some neuro pathways. I don't know the exact terminology, but it like really works in the classroom. Um,
they can
and
work,
then
right?
once we
Yeah.
move past the unplugged part, they understand the concept of it. They understand that it's one step at a time. I've got to put myself in that position. Okay, I'm moving forward, then turning left. So they're breaking up the whole journey into like little blocks, I would think. Yeah, little blocks. And then once they get over that and they understand that, then they can move on to like something like scratch coding, where it's drag and drop, and doing things like that, where it's easier for them to maybe create a code on their iPad or whatever device that they're using. And then from that, we can move on to
Yeah,
like
that,
programming.
that block based coding is a really great, once they've got the concepts and
Yes.
principles down in the unplugged activities, to move to a block based coding where it's really kind
Yeah.
of
So very
translating what they've
hands-on.
seen in the physical into digital is fabulous. Yeah, and there's so many great websites like code.org that have got loads and loads of
Our
activities there
code.
as
Yeah.
well.
Yes. It's really, really amazing. Well, coding is another language, just like maths. Maths is a language, and once you learn how to speak in that language, it becomes so much more clearer for the child, and it's such an amazing tool for them to learn at an early age. Because I mean,
Mm,
these are the app developers, these are the children that are going to be doing all of these like amazing things, like jobs that aren't even like thought of yet. I mean, a year ago, or not a year ago, but like 2 years ago, we didn't even think about having like a COVID app. Now we have things like this. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's about giving our children the skills that they're going to need, and giving them the skills that
mm,
we don't know what they're going to need in 5 or 10 years time, but just making that love of learning there all the time, so
mm.
that when we need them to step up, they already have the motivation to get up and do what they need to do, you know.
Absolutely. And I even think, Shana, like what you're saying around the skills that our students need, and like some of them they'll become coders, they'll become developers, they'll become designers, they'll become programmers. But I think even for those of our students who don't, if I just think about how overwhelming the world
Yes.
seems at this point, in history, and how it's very easy to kind of suffer from things like anxiety and get overwhelmed by problems. And even those almost, the soft skills, the emotional intelligence that we're cultivating, of you're looking at a big problem, it's a big challenge. We need to get from here to there, but how do you break it down? What are the pieces? What are the things that are working that you need to repeat? I think really when I've started to understand the world of coding and how many things that actually teaches our students, I can see why it absolutely does. It fosters that love of learning, because they can apply those things to so many other different areas, right? It's not
Yeah.
just about the electronics and the
Yes.
literal coding.
And
It's
also
all of
like
the
as we
skills that we need beyond just the classroom and beyond the curriculum. It's how we teach our kids to thrive in this very uncertain world. So I really, really love that, and think that it's so important. And you really do inspire so many teachers to just think a little bit differently, and to do that, to cultivate the love of learning for our students. So I think as we close, because my coffee's almost done. The last thing that I wanted to ask you, Shanaz, is what advice do you have for teachers who are interested in coding or computational thinking? Where should they start if there is no coding or computational thinking happening at the school? How would you encourage teachers to go on this journey that you've been on? Because like you said, there was a time where you didn't know anything about coding and you weren't quite sure about it. So based on your journey and your experience, which has taken you to very exciting places, what advice would you have to share with teachers watching this live or on our Purple ZA site?
So first of all, you may think it's not happening at your school, but it's happening everywhere. So the first thing I think is like just be aware. So when you're writing the date on the board, you're doing anything like they're lining up and going to the field. All of those things is coding. They're moving in a line. It's everything that we are doing already that's been broken up. So coding is just basically like the computational thinking that we were talking about earlier. So if you want to start it, just start being aware, like look at things that you're doing every single day. Every routine that you're doing is coding. And if you once you understand that you're already doing it, it cuts out that fear, and then you can start looking at
Mhm.
unplugged activities. How can I get if you're giving a child a little block and saying, okay, I want you to go from in the classroom, I want you to go from Sally's place to John's place. Now they've got to put themselves in that shoes and say, you know what, I've got to go forward, forward, left. It teaches directionality and spatial awareness, making use of what's around them. It's really, really important for them to know all of these things. And it's just basically understanding that once you get that understanding and once you realize that it's everywhere and learning is everywhere and it's not limited to just the classroom, that's when you'll just be like amazed by the opportunities that you can do with coding and stuff. It's not about being in the box, out the box. It's about using the box and getting using it to open other opportunities for learning. So you can start off with unplugged activities, then you can get on to doing things like Bbot or Tinker, the Tinker app, using Sphero, Ozobot, those kind of things. Amazed, like you can start off with that. Once you
And you
finish
can do
your
a lot with just one in a classroom, right? You don't
yes,
need to
yes, you
have a
just need one.
whole fleet,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, brilliant.
So you just need one Sphero ball or one Ozobot. It can do amazing things, and then you can move on to like you can see how children can. You'll see the children that click on like instantly. You can get them to do like drag and drop code. Now with Sphero, you don't even need the actual Sphero ball. There's an option of the virtual. It's a virtual stimulator. So if
Oh,
you download the Sphero ball,
wow.
you can get them to. You can put up a plan on your classroom and say, okay, well, this will be like little older, like primary school. You can say, okay, I want you to get the carrot to the, I don't know, to the plate. And they've got to work out the angle, like as we were talking about earlier, like the obtuse and all of that. You can
Right.
work out the angle using that. And you don't need the sphero ball. You just press play and it plays their program to that. So it doesn't have to be,
Brilliant. So even if you're teaching online, what I'm
yes,
hearing is there's no excuse.
yes,
There are so many things out there to play with, and I think that's the thing,
definitely.
right? Is that when we can overcome that fear, then we
Yeah.
start to understand that actually it's fun for teachers too, right? It becomes a playful kind of growth thing, and also that we don't have to know everything. That our students and like we can learn together. We don't have to
And they'll
be
definitely
this.
teach us way more.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And that's such a brilliant attitude to adopt. And I'm thinking about our fun feature focus Fridays that are coming up, which you can have a look at Teach Fix Fridays. On Friday, we are challenging some of our EdTech rock stars to with a little game of whose lesson is it anyway. And in preparing for that, what we are doing is giving them some pieces, randomly selected pieces, and they're going to have to construct and build and design a lesson, which is it's another form of computational thinking, right?
Yes, yes, yes,
It's about
definitely.
finding solutions to a problem and putting the pieces together. And then at the end of July, Shanaz, you must come and join us. We have a game called Time Machine, created by the guys at Sleuth It. It's going to be a competition for teachers to solve the mystery of the time machine in a little online game. So these are skills that are everywhere, right? When we play games, when we talk, when we communicate. Hello, little one. Guest appearance. Woohoo! These are skills that are everywhere, right? And they're so accessible to us. So Shanaz, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for inspiring us, and I think just really for making this idea of coding so accessible and so real. I can see how your students loved your lessons and continue to love them so much because you have this ability to, to really extrapolate right to the core of the thing. What is the skill? What are we trying to achieve here? And then to build and design from there. So well done for being such an inspiring teacher, and please keep up the good work. And to those of you watching, I want to say until next time, keep experimenting. What advice would you give, Shanaz? What should they keep doing?
Keep coding.
Keep coding. Until next time. Thank you, Shanaz.